Welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ daily news television show, broadcasting live and available on demand on your favorite streaming channels.
We are proud to announce that YouTube has recognized Queer News Tonight, certified by analytics company vidIQ, as the world's most popular LGBTQ streaming news show. Our queer stories have reached over 10 million views.
We are proud that Queer News Tonight has more YouTube subscribers than any other LGBTQ brand in Florida. We thank you for watching and supporting our voice in the LGBTQ community. There is no other news program in the LGBTQ world like Queer News Tonight.
It is Thursday, March 20th. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we'll tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
You're watching Queer News Tonight, the world's first daily LGBTQ evening news show.
Welcome to the world's most important LGBTQ evening news show.
Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, is a non-profit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ community. Our non-profit mission is to support the 11 pillars of our LGBTQ community who want to inform and educate the key issues of lesbian, trans, Latino, Black, healthcare, seniors, students, faith, social justice, business, and queer culture. Help us support our diverse community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ nonprofit media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network. In 2025, our magazine is celebrating 40 years of the LGBTQ experience, and Queer News Tonight is celebrating our 5th anniversary with more than 10,000 LGBTQ television stories. We will produce the 25th anniversary of our Stonewall Pride Parade and Festival on June 14th. We present Pride Fete in August and Pride Fort Lauderdale in February. Our magazine, events, television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ and broader community.
In 2025, more than 100 community leader anchors will host this show, to support the LGBTQ community. Let's meet today's anchors at Queer News Tonight. Let's welcome anchor Alex Morash. Alex has served as editor-in-chief of Options Magazine, media director of the LGBTQ Task Force, and press secretary for the Florida Democratic Party. Alex, SunServe's free SilverServe Luncheon returns April 11th. Tell me, what's happening?
Sure thing, Bobby. You know, SunServe's SilverServe Luncheon, a monthly gathering for LGBTQ seniors and allies, returns on Friday, April 11th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Island City Park Preserve in Wilton Manors. This free event provides a welcoming space for community members to connect over a delicious meal. Attendees are encouraged to RSVP online to ensure accurate catering preparations. Complimentary self-parking is available behind City Hall. SunServe invites seniors to enjoy good food, great company, and meaningful conversations at this recurring luncheon held on the second Friday of every month. For more details and to RSVP, visit sunserve.org. And it sounds like a really lovely time for seniors, you know, and I know that, like, not all of us are at that age, and you're far too young to go to it yourself, Bobby. So I know that you'd love to go, but you're too young.
I'm giving you that look like how you make fun of my age.
I was thinking, I was like, no, I'm too young for it.
But more importantly, you know, our general culture, our general community is not particularly supportive of people who are in the senior and elderly classes.
Well, and the irony is, if you look at the median age in the greater Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale area, for example, I think, you know, it's looking around 55 years old or older. Mm-hmm. So there is a community out there. I think it's important that we support our gay seniors and elders, because hopefully we'll be there someday too.
And, you know, I was thinking also, like, ever since the Silver Lounge, I think it was called, I can't think of many places that are geared towards the senior population.
They had comedy shows there.
Yeah.
Where the Eagle is now.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, Tropics. That's the one. Anyways, that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer non-profit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing, and Queer News Tonight looks forward to seeing you at SunServe's free SilverServe Luncheon on April 11th. Let's welcome anchor Larry Farver. Larry has over 20 years of experience in human resources, acting, film, radio, TV, live events, parade float design, production, and casting. He is also a board member of the West Side Association. Larry, Rainbow Sports League hosts a free kickball event on March 29th. Tell me what's happening.
Sure, Bobby. Rainbow Sports League invites the community to a free open play kickball event March 29th from 12 to 3. At Mickle Field. The event is open to all skill levels, offering a chance to meet new people, enjoy friendly competition, and prepare for the upcoming spring kickball leagues, which officially begin on April 5th. Participants can enjoy an afternoon of fun, teamwork, and inclusivity in a welcoming LGBTQ environment. So whether you're a seasoned player or just looking to try something new, this event provides the perfect opportunity to get active and connect with the community. For more details about open play and the upcoming leagues, visit rainbowsportsleague.com. Well, I live just a couple blocks away from many of the events at Mickle Park off of Powerline Road, for those who don't know, or State Road 845 or 9th Avenue, has many different names, but it's an amazing park. There's usually a concession there. I know that there may be some upcoming plans to include that with some of the sports leagues, but the sport leagues are very vibrant. All skill levels, there's a lot of enthusiasm. And again, I think the most important thing is all skill levels and that everyone feels welcome. I think many of us, myself, I'm speaking for myself, I remember the days in gym when they forced me to try to climb a rope or do those things. But I was always good at kickball, good at soccer. I guess, I don't know if gay men have a reputation for being good at kicking things, but that was my better, strong suit. So they do other things as well. So I encourage everyone to go out, and even if you don't want to play, encourage go out and cheer them on. And a lot of good-looking guys and gals out there too.
All right, we were talking earlier about this kickball event, and I used to be part of the Stonewall Kickball in D.C. Mm-hmm. Is the LGBTQ kickball down here? Is there a Stonewall League or a separate kickball league associated with?
I believe Rainbow Sports League covers too much. Yeah. The vast majority of it. They run softball, they run kickball. I used to go to kickball events all the time because I have friends who play in one of the teams. And at Micklefield, we started at Micklefield, but we also played on the other side of Powerline, the bigger one, the bigger park. Yeah. I forgot what park.
Hagen Park near Town Hall?
No, the other one, the one across from Powerline from Mickle.
Oh, okay.
The Giants one.
Oh, yes. Yes. With the Mills Pond.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And anyways, I was just generally an athletic supporter. I bring drinks. and also for those who are basically just want to have a good time socializing.
Yes.
Just after kickball, the teams go back to the drive to enjoy an after game drink, usually a gym bar. So
And can I just say before we were kickball is also one of those really low intensity, easy things. Like as someone who did if you're a little nervous about getting into a queer sport, kickball is one of the better ones to get into.
Yeah, kickball is basically you kick a ball and you play it like softball.
Well, and looking back, I think I was queen of my cul-de-sac growing up in suburbia. So, but I have many good memories, and I think it would be fun just to try it out. So you may see me there.
Uh-huh. Well, that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing. And Queer News Tonight look forward to seeing you at Rainbow Sports League for free kickball events on March 29th.
And of course, let's welcome tonight's lead anchor, Dr. Bobby Huen, a world traveler and versed in global affairs. Bobby provides an international perspective on current events. A PhD in conflict resolution, Bobby is a certified civil and family mediator and the founder of BH Conflict Resolutions and one of my dearest friends here in Wilton Manors, I might add. So Bobby, the next Equality Park After Dark is on April 17th. Tell me what's happening.
So on April 17th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., Equality Park After Dark returns to the newly renovated plaza at Equality Park in Wilton Manors. This vibrant monthly market offers a mix of food trucks, handmade crafts, vintage finds, art, music, and local businesses. Visitors can eat, shop, and socialize while exploring unique vendors, artists, and authors. This pet-friendly event invites everyone to bring their friends and furry companions for an evening of community and creativity. Held every third Thursday of the month, Equality Park After Dark is a must-visit for those looking to support local merchants and enjoy South Florida's diverse culture. For more details, visit pridecenterflorida.org. Well, so Alex has a dog. He's the cutest dog in the world. His name is Enzo, and I believe that since this is a dog-friendly event, maybe we can have him out on an evening stroll.
Yeah, the moment I saw that, I was like, oh, something I can bring Enzo to, which means I'm more likely to go to it. Just like, especially for those of us, like, I work from home, so my dog is used to me being around, so I don't like to not take him when I can. So these sorts of events make it much easier to go to, and it sounds like a really lovely time.
That's a great idea. I think I might try that too. It's good to know that there are dog-friendly events in Wilton Manors. My girl doesn't get out a lot either, and it's good for her to socialize. So.
And there are a couple of businesses here that are very, very pro.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I look forward to this event, actually. So that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing. And Queer News Tonight looks forward to seeing you at the Equality Park After Dark on April 17th. Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Dr. Bobby Huen, and let's queer South Florida and Florida. National LGBTQ Museum mobilizes 1990-style ACT UP movement to fight attacks. The Stonewall National Museum, Archives, and Library is calling for a new era of activism inspired by the ACT UP movement of the 1980s. The National LGBTQ Museum is mobilizing communities to counter what it calls a direct attack on constitutional rights and freedoms. Robert Keston, president of the Stonewall Museum, declared in a statement, quote, "Today we face a different threat, but one that is far greater than any virus. It is the government's outright attack on our constitutional rights and freedoms, ignoring the rule of law, rewriting history, and violating the confidence between American citizens and our government," end quote. ACT UP was formed in response to the AIDS crisis, forcing the U.S. government to take action as thousands died. Kasten says that the same energy is needed today to resist efforts to roll back queer rights. He calls on queer organizations, civil rights groups, labor unions, and individuals to stand together. The museum urges protests and even a nationwide economic shutdown, stating, "No planes in the skies, no trains, no cars or trucks on the roads." The rallying cry remains, "Silence equals death." The declaration of an ACT UP approach to what is occurring in America against the LGBTQ community is a clear expression of frustration with what our traditional LGBTQ advocacy organizations have delivered so far in 2025. ACT UP was the LGBTQ community's last stand for awareness of the AIDS crisis to America's hearts and minds. For more information, supporters can contact stonewall-museum.org. Well, I am not old enough to witness firsthand what ACT UP is, but we all know very well because first of all, I studied the movement as part of my doctoral dissertation. But when, ACT UP was a very radical protest movement to disrupt events, to disrupt what is happening in order to express frustration that LGBTQ people, especially gay men at the time, was treated as invisible. During the AIDS crisis, no one wanted to talk about it. No one, the religious right was celebrating our deaths, but the mainstream media and the people in government were just basically taking a blind eye to us. They just want us to all die off, and then the problem would probably go away. But it doesn't work that way. We stage protest. We put out the quilt. We make sure that we are visible and heard.
Yeah, even though I was a very, 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 I must stress, very young man back then, I do remember ACT UP. While I was not a formal member of ACT UP, I supported them. I witnessed them in action. I marched in many gay pride parades in New York City and New Jersey. I've done marches on Washington, 1987, 93, marches on the State House in New Jersey. So I think it's very important. I applaud Robert Keston for initiating this. I think it's been something that's been on the top of many of our minds. And I think that going after the economic, that's a peaceful protest. They need to see how aware we are, how aware our allies are and supportive they are, that we're a force not to be messed around with. We're not the kids in the playground that we were maybe in some cases when we were growing up and we were isolated or picked on. So I highly, highly encourage people to look for opportunities and keep an eye on the pulse of what's going on. And that means that if people are backing out of events, they should know about it, write them. A lot of companies on their websites have a place for commentary, and we need to be visible. I can't stress that enough.
No, I hear you, and I only remember the rare report I would see in the news as a young child, but I am very glad that Stonewall Archive is talking about this. I think there's a few different things we have to unpack in this all. First and foremost, why did ACT UP come about? Because there were no way to go through the legitimate processes in the government to actually create change. And that's a very scary thing to admit to ourselves, but we need to. We need to admit that right now. There is no way to legitimately create change within this current administration.
You can't sugarcoat it.
That's right. You have to use civil disobedience, activism, and so I'm glad that Stonewall's calling it out. I guess my only biggest difference between my opinions and Stonewall's, Stonewall's the LGBTQ groups haven't done anything for us this year, and I think if we did a look at the last 50 years, it's a little hard to say how much they've really done at the federal level, but I don't want to go too deep into that. But looking at the other part of it, ACT UP was an came about organically, so I'm not sure if nonprofits calling for it helps, but I also don't think it necessarily hurts. And I also think that, our time, this is an example of not just within LGBTQ activism, but the whole progressive left of Genghis Khan in politics is leaderless right now. People, I see in the news that people are burning Tesla dealerships all the time. I'm because they have no idea how else to express their frustration right now.
Yes.
And you need these groups. I also will add that, I think we also need to look at groups like the Black Panthers and the John Brown Gun Club and defensive militias, because you're seeing a lot of hate being directed at queers and non-white people. There was a video that's been going around of black business owners in one town formed a militia to protect a school because the Klan has been coming. Racists have been going to protest it every day. And all right, you're going to do that, we're going to show up and make sure you don't hurt anybody. I think we need to start thinking in these different activist ways more now.
And also, to complement that, Alex, is to protect our trans brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
I think, I hope that we're wrong about it, but, I know personally several people who are afraid, who are very confident people in our community, their leadership, and I think one of the ways too is to make our voice heard through the arts, because we are the creative people. I think we write better than many artists out there. We perform, we're out there, and we lead in the creative communities. So.
But we have to go a little bit further.
Absolutely.
There are Republican members of Congress right now who are outing trans people on social media, and they are getting death threats.
Absolutely.
We have to have ways of protecting each other now.
We need to fight fire with fire at this point.
Absolutely.
Right-wing people have botnets and troll farms. We need to have our own. Why do we not have our own? We should have our own thousands-men-strong troll farm and bots to make fun of them every single day on Twitter, on Facebook, whatever. We basically see those spaces because we are polite society, but the other side is not fighting politely.
No.
But that in-person activism, I think, is so important, because that's been the scariest thing. You haven't seen much opposition to Trump. Trump's a coward. He backs down from a fight, and no one has given him a fight yet.
There was a nationwide protest of veterans against the cuts of VA, except that no mainstream media organization, not even local news channel, covers that stuff. And that's because 5 companies control almost every single local news network, and they do not want to rock the boat because Trump is going to take their broadcast license away, as he stated. I mean, at this very moment, he is trying to basically shut down any kind of channel that he doesn't like or critical of him.
Well, did ACT UP get news in their first protest? I don't recall them getting a ton of media at the beginning.
I came from the New York metropolitan area, so they did. And actually, we were quite fortunate to have allies with the three major networks. I try to tap in now that I've been a Florida resident for over 5 years, and into what's going on there. And I've asked my brother, who's a physician in Manhattan, hey, what's the pulse there? But, there's still, I think for people who are allies, including my brother, there's a sense that we're in a very surreal situation. Not just, my brother's heterosexual, but he feels that things are really out of place and that we need to get back on track and come back to reality and have politicians, our president, represent everyone.
Yeah, and right now, speak of boycotts or economic punishment against those who manipulate the government.
Yes.
We're talking about Tesla here.
Yes,
people are burning up Tesla. But the thing is, though, White House is lockstep with them because the White House press secretary, it was the incoming AG, Pam Bondi, is now trying to declare boycott of Tesla to be quote-unquote illegal, and burning down Tesla is now domestic terrorism. Apparently, if Honda burns down, it's not. But
Well, and then we have the same people, the president doing, shutting the light switch off on things he doesn't like we were just mentioning earlier. So I think we do need to put our foot forward and do wherever we feel comfortable. But I think all of our gay, lesbian, and trans brothers and sisters and allies need to move forward. But we do need to start, I think, nominating or encouraging leadership within our communities.
That is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.
Now, let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Alex Morash, and let's queer up gay culture. Spark Social House brings sober nightlife as new LGBTQ bar to D.C. In the heart of Washington, D.C.'s LGBTQ scene, Spark Social House is shaking up nightlife without the alcohol. Nestled at 14th and U Street, this new venue transforms from a cozy daytime cafe into a lively DJ-fueled dance spot offering craft mocktails instead of booze. Owner Nick Tazaki discovered an opportunity in this. Talking to the Washington Blade, he said, one statistic I found was that 38% of American adults don't drink. Alcohol isn't required for fun. This is about connection, end quote. Having bartended across D.C., he noticed a demand for mocktails, yet patrons often hesitated to ask for them. Tazaki himself rarely drinks. Recognizing the challenges non-drinkers face in nightlife, he wanted to create a welcoming space. The role of alcohol in the LGBTQ community is a hot topic. Issues related to excessive dependence on alcohol have been discussed extensively here at Queer News Tonight. Guests at Spark's soft opening praised the concept. One customer said, quote, traditional gay bars are important, but there's a culture shift, end quote. Our South Florida neighborhood of Wilton Manors takes note of this type of business expansion in Washington, D.C. Could this be a model for new businesses to work in Wilton Manors and other large LGBTQ communities? Queer News Tonight will follow this closely. Well, as a former D.C. resident, I know 14th and U very well. I'll be like, he sounds like a very nice person. I don't think this is a good business strategy, honestly, especially maybe DC culture has radically changed, but we'll see. I think of Wilton Manors. I know people are trying non-alcoholic places, but I look at Kava Jive, which tried to be this non-alcoholic true bar. It had a big bar thing, tried to do video games. It didn't last very long.
And the other thing is, how do you how do I say it? A bar environment for non-drinkers serving up non-alcoholic drinks, I don't know if it works so well because, for example, I don't think I would enjoy piercing loud music or DJ and stuff and dance beats. If I am, not sipping an actual alcoholic cocktail, a better idea would be an all-night coffee shop or tea house where, you can try on different drinks and juices and with some loungy music instead of bam, 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 bam,
Well, let's see where it goes. I know that Wilton Manors does have several venues that are emerging. Recently, Thirsties on the Drive is one example, and it's a nice little cozy place to go. I know that we have some members in our community who are in recovery, and it's nice for their allies as well. And sometimes you just don't want to drink. You might be trying to cut back, but I hear what you're saying too, Bobby. But it might be something worth looking at. I know that, in addition to Thirsties, they have a location out on Oakland Park Boulevard in Oakland Park, the Fort Lauderdale Nutrition Store. Marriott's Mary Productions, which I'm affiliated with as a volunteer in their film production, did a fundraiser for a Costa Rican fundraiser, Suitcases of Love. So they support, LGBTQ homeless young people, and they do other charitable works as well. So I think it's something to look at. I know that there's sometimes a clash between staying healthy and having fun, and we're kind of in a time where we have a president who eats Big Macs 24 hours a day. So,
Diet Coke.
Although he might enjoy it. No, we wouldn't want him there. But seriously, I think it's an exciting concept to look at.
Fair enough. And I think, that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.
Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Larry Farver, and let's queer up the USA view. San Francisco Pride loses major sponsors but fights to stay afloat. San Francisco's 2025 Pride celebration is facing a $300,000 shortfall after a major corporate sponsors, including Anheuser-Busch, withdrew their support. The brewing giant, along with La Crema and Diageo and Comcast, blame the decision on financial constraints, but Pride organizers suspect a deeper motive. Suzanne Ford, executive director of San Francisco Pride, called the move, quote, very abnormal, end quote, noting that the long-term sponsors typically discuss funding concerns before pulling out. She added, quote, I just interpreted that companies are making decisions at this time. It's not to be good to be sponsoring Pride, end quote. However, despite the funding loss, Ford says Pride will go on as many people rely on it. It is not the first time Anheuser-Busch has let the community down. In the 2023 controversy, the company faced right-wing backlash over a Bud Light promotion featuring transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. As a response to the backlash, it chose to distance itself from the community. Our nonprofit LGBTQ media company Hotspots Happening Out produces 3 Pride events in South Florida, notably including the June Stonewall Pride, August Pride Fete, and next February's Pride Fort Lauderdale. We are just days away from Palm Beach, Tampa, and Miami Beach Pride, and sources have relayed concerns about the anti-DEI initiatives and how they will affect the basics of celebrating LGBTQ Pride. As we move toward June Pride Month, this story is evolving. Stay tuned. Well, I need to say I'm very disappointed in Anheuser-Busch. I'm from New Jersey. That's one of the big beers up there. So I had Bud Lights. They also own Stella Artois. So I'm concerned about that. Looking at some of the others, I'm paying a fortune every month to an affiliate, Xfinity, which is Comcast. So very disappointed in that as well. I think there might be an affiliation, if I'm not mistaken, with Disney. I believe that there's some kind of, and I can check on that further.
I don't think so. You're
No.
thinking Hulu? Yeah, no.
Okay, no.
Comcast is separate.
Okay,
Paramount.
All the companies are in bed with each other. Who knows?
Peacock is the one that
Okay.
streaming. So.
But, Diageo, they own Guinness and Smirnoff. So I'm very disappointed because I've been a supportive of those brands as well. Certainly I think we need to look in our community, and if this continues, maybe, let our bar owners know what our voice is. I think you're going to also see a difference between the bars that are owned by queer people in our community, versus maybe bars that are not owned, they're allies, so to speak, in business, but they buy what they think will sell.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I'm not going to force bar owners to dump their reserve of Smirnoff. I mean, they bought the stock. They would lose money to replace that stock. And the bar margin is not very thick here in Wilton Manor, since we are used to cheap drinks and we're used to happy hour discounts all the way until like 9 p.m. But on the other, but unfortunately, it's very disappointing. I think Comcast made the move because Comcast owns MSNBC and NBC, and NBC News have been critical of Trump, and he is already trying to use his power, his crony in the FCC to try to shut them down or revoke their broadcast license or something of that sort, which is going to end up a giant court fight that will last 10 years. But on the other hand, I'm very disappointed in Anheuser-Busch and Diageo because, let's face it, the queer community are big drinkers. We've supported some of these brands for ages. And Diageo is something that you cannot avoid because they gobbled up almost every other brand we know. They have Captain Morgan, you said the Guinness, Johnny Walker, who doesn't like, Scotch and Coke, or, whiskey. They have the Crown Royal. They basically cover all the drinks that an average gay bar needs.
Well, now, I do want to say, though, when you were talking about the not wanting to pour the alcohol out, few people remember Harvey Milk's first thing in activism was starting a gay bar boycott on Coors Light, and they did dump the Coors Light in the sink. But we're talking all about these specific companies, and what we think. And like for me, as someone who's been warning about corporate sponsorship and pride since literally I wrote about it in The Advocate in 2017, and I haven't been talking about it since. I don't view the companies as the problem. They are mindless institutions seeking profit at all cost, and they're not the issue. San Francisco Pride put themselves in a situation where they were dependent on corporations, and now their chickens have come home to roost, quite frankly. I mean, they're but this is, let me continue. The thing that I really think that the big issue with these prides is they put in this idea of putting these big events on that need tons of money. The only way they can get that money is with corporations, but corporations are so fickle. You've created a very unstable organization that you're not going to be able to sustain unless you dramatically change Pride and make it go back to being a real activist movement, back to serving our community instead of serving these corporations. Oh no, I definitely they got what they deserve. Frankly.
I agree, but change doesn't happen overnight, and most of the events probably are set now. And
you're right. This has been a multi-year problem.
And I would like to add, I think we need to look very closely at the upcoming prides that were just mentioned, whether it's Palm Beach, Miami, our Pride event in Wilton Manors, and then future ones, and really take a close look at who the sponsors are and then look at the products being sold and see if there's a correlation or if there's a big disparity between what's being served and the sponsorship.
Remember, smaller prides are not as corporate focused, partially because corporations don't want to invest in smaller prides. DC, Boston, New York City, San Francisco, LA, those are the big five that tend to be the most into corporate money. New York City Pride is so bad that corporations could pay to be the only company of that industry at the Pride event. In Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a company could pay to be the sponsoring name of the Pride. So they once had a fracking company with the name of their Pride year. This is Pride has been very out of control with corporate sponsorships, and now that it's no longer cool for a corporation to donate, they're all with their male appendage in the wind, quite frankly.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bobby.
And also we have to bear in mind, all these DEI crackdowns. I'm not even sure if we were allowed to have Pride. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about it in the news piece that we're going to cover tonight. But we might be following, the footsteps of authoritarianism, and people are, any kind of distinct ethnicity or identity, any kind of identity-focused event will be snuffed out because, it's somehow like DEI or something.
You say that. But then I look at everyone gets affected. As an Irish, Italian American, there's already two events that where my people would get upset. Queer people would get upset. Everyone has some background. And, the idea of trying to ban all of that, I just think couldn't happen.
Yeah, and you look, I did a story recently where they talked about Staten Island being, having their first inclusive gay inclusion within a St. Patty's Day parade after all of the rest of the boroughs of New York allowed it. So, you know, I think we need to look too, if we need to, maybe we need to become less dependent, as you alluded to before, Bobby, on some of these sponsorships. I remember going back to when I was, again, very, very young, but building floats in New Jersey for the New York Pride Parade. We raised our own funds. We built things, you know, the parade floats, you know, out of our own money. And we did very well.
You look at Carnival in P-Town.
Absolutely.
They'll sometimes have like one big sponsor, like JetBlue or something. But almost some years, there's no big corporate sponsor, and they have a great time.
I think it's still in my intro, but back in the day when I was really doing parade floats for fun, in addition to politics, we had a great inn. It's no longer owned by the same people, but Carpe Diem on Johnson Street used to sponsor. And we started out with a very low budget. We supplemented it, but we got money from them. And we were able to rent a Mack truck, have a driver, and we built our float. A lot of it was constructed in New Jersey, and we brought it up in our cars. So we can do things like that in other ways to, whether we're rallying, we're creating pride events. We certainly have great gay, lesbian, and trans and ally sponsors like the pub in Wilton Manors. So I think we need to really look inside and then look at, you know, what was said before with Robert Keston and Stonewall Museum.
I believe that's what needs to change. We should have floats that are more protest focused instead of celebrating, because we're under attack now. We're in defense mode. We don't have to, you know, instead of celebrating, we need to be protesting.
Go back to, it might not be as exciting, but we can glam it up or whatever we want to do, but we can be contingents and have our banners. I've carried many a banner back in the day.
Oh yeah, marches, like literally the piece I wrote in 2017 was because the way people were getting so no longer feeling that Pride was speaking for us. There was a DC Pride march that counter to the parade. And I found the march was people found that to be much more engaging.
Yes.
LA Pride, I believe, actually, some years have been only a march. They said, you know, we're not even going to bother with the parade. We're going to just do the march. So yeah, it's something that we might see more of. Though I just want to add, like, when I talk about like corporate money, I do mean corporations. Like the local bar, I don't treats us in the fair weather friend way that like Wells Fargo does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.
Now, let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Alex Morash, and let's queer up politics. Log Cabin Republicans' normal gay event in Palm Springs sparks outrage. The Log Cabin Republicans in Palm Springs have once again ignited a backlash, this time for promoting their upcoming right-wing gathering, which they call, quote, a normal gay social, end quote. LGBTQ activists said that Log Cabin's announcement was a, quote, dog whistle, end quote, referring to Vice President J.D. Vance's campaign statement about so-called normal gays, implying much of the queer community was radical and too progressive. Originally planned for April at the Tropicale, a well-known local hotspot, the event promised, quote, community and common sense, end quote, and cocktails, end quote. However, after intense criticism, Tropicale's owner, Tony DeLamendo, who once served as a queer favorite for Barbra Streisand as her personal chef, asked Log Cabin to find another venue. Vance coined the term, quote, normal gay, end quote, and claimed that, quote, normal gay guys, end quote, would vote for them just to be left alone. Log Cabin Palm Springs has now embraced the phrase, defending their event as a stand against what they call, quote, radical left queer politics. One of their recent posts stated, quote, we love our country, and that sets us apart from the radical left, which insists that to be truly LGBT, one must embrace Marxist economic policies, open borders, and lawless streets. No thanks, end quote. But many LGBTQ individuals have fired back, rejecting the implication that those outside of Log Cabin's ideology are somehow abnormal. One critic wrote, quote, I've yet to meet anyone who doesn't want a strong economy, safe neighborhoods, and good schools. What that tells me is you need to get out more, end quote. You know, before we even start this discussion, I do also want to remind people of how the LGBTQ community voted in the last election for president. You know, because I keep hearing about like these gays that voted for Trump. There's like 5 of them. 88% of the LGBTQ community voted for Harris. And I think a couple percentage also went third party. So we're talking about less than 10% of the LGBTQ community here. And so when people talk about I'm like, they're non-existent. The LGBT community is the only group that swung 22 points from last election to this election. For Harris. So like we need to talk about like log cabin, they can't get anybody. And the idea of quote unquote normal gays, like what the heck does that even mean?
There's a lot of recent coverage about log cabin Republicans. Melania has attended one of the sparsely attended fundraiser where straight people outnumber queer people. And 2 years, and I found this from an article 2 years ago. Log cabin Republicans designated a 2023 outspoken ambassador who is a self-proclaimed internet troll and who tweeted, being a homosexual and quoting it proudly has zero space inside the Republican Party or within the conservative movement, end quote. In other words, they find people who hate them as their ambassador, viscerally hate them. And also, I just want to parse what their quote is here. Quote, we love our country. Interpretation, we blindly support Trump and Vance. And that set us apart from the radical left. Interpretation, anyone who is not to the left of a certain Adolf is quote-unquote radical left. One must embrace Marxist economic policies. Oh, so therefore you want to get rid of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, everything that's...
Well, we shouldn't misrepresent the joys of Marxist policies, sir.
Either way. So, look, those are socialist policies. Social Security, they're fundamentally parts of socialism that was incorporated into the economic framework of the United States.
The way you made it sound like Marxists would get rid of Social Security, and I'm like, oh, that's a different take. But
and lawless streets, I don't think anyone wants lawless streets or open borders. I mean, we are supportive of reasonable border policies, not deporting everyone you don't like, or armed police with military equipment, with cannons. What do they need cannons for? But you know what I mean. When log cabin Republicans show up to declare something, usually it's basically tokenism, just like Richard Granell, the guy that they often log cabin Republicans often trot out as like the first homosexual to hold a post in the cabinet. The guy is just basically a glad fly who would do whatever they say. It's like Herman Cain for African Americans or
well, and I don't want this to come out the wrong way, and if it is, I apologize. I mean, it's almost like the LCR. I think they're trying to make themselves look cool with that name LCR. It takes away the old fuddy-duddy log cabin club that I think it existed back in the early 90s. I mean, I was invited with my former spouse to one of those, and certainly not the same people that you're seeing now who are talking about being normal gays. But I think that, these people who are representing log cabin in this quote unquote being normal gays are really almost like what you would call the Uncle Toms of past African American history who, basically were not representing their community.
In other words, the collaborators, the one who hope that they are going to send to the camps the last.
Yes, that they think that they're looking out for their own asses, so to speak.
And also, I just call them the Quislings because that's more accurate.
But I unfortunately I have some people in my own family who think the same thing. It's that we're all borderline Marxists if we aren't. And I said, no, I enjoy all the things. I want my Social Security. Tell your president to not get rid of it because I'm going to depend on it. I'm not independently wealthy where I can just live off, my investments for the rest of my life without that. And you have to look at the reality. Many of us are reasonable, I think, moderates in terms of the good for our country, having lawful, law-abiding citizens, certainly being supportive of people who work hard to, contribute to our society. And, this propaganda, I think we just need, again, to band together and tell our story and slap them with our reality.
Having equal rights is not a radical idea. Having trans people to actually have the human dignity is not a radical idea.
Not at all.
Those are basic human rights.
I would actually say that equality is a radical idea, but that's a good thing. Being radical doesn't equal evil. Like, they were only in like the last couple decades of the tens of thousand plus years of recorded history had equality been something that was considered normal.
You have to look that we can't go back. I mean, even getting outside of our community, you know, many of my ancestors came over from the Germanic regions to escape, you know, religious persecution. And, you know, there are times in our histories, without getting too detailed, where people were killed or, you know, expelled from society or treated like lepers or outcasts.
And, you know, for people, whether we're talking about like how the log cabin calls people Marxists, which I consider a compliment, and all sorts of other things, the thing to also remember at the end of the day, you know, the difference between radical and fringe. Fringe implies like no one is buying what you're selling. And looking at who's showing up and how people are voting, the only fringe stuff I see in the LGBTQ community is the log cabin Republicans, because they're literally like five guys in a rowboat at this point.
And we're not talking about, we're not terrorists, we're not vigilantes, we're not blowing up cars or people.
Well, none of us have been to a Tesla dealership, at least. So.
Yeah, we don't have Teslas.
Not at all.
No.
Well, you can all come for me on that later.
Okay. That is a big LGBTQ story for today. There's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight. Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Bobby Huen, and let's queer up the worldview. Hungary's parliament filled with rainbow smoke as law banning pride passes. Protests erupted in Hungary's capital Budapest following the passage of a law banning pride events and allowing the use of facial recognition software to track attendees. The nation's largest LGBTQ event, Budapest Pride, thousands took to the streets, blocking the Margaret Bridge over the Danube, while opposition lawmakers set off rainbow smoke bombs in parliament to demonstrate their opposition. Evgeny Belishakov, a Russian citizen living in Hungary, expressed the concerns, saying, quote, "It's quite terrifying, to be honest, because we had the same in Russia. It was building up step by step, and I feel like this is what is going on here. I just only hope there will be more resistance like this in Hungary, because in Russia, we didn't resist on time, and now it's too late," end quote. The law passed with overwhelming support from Prime Minister Viktor Orban's Fidesz party and the Christian Democrats. Bans attending or hosting events that promote homosexuality if minors might be present. Attendees face fines of around $550, and law enforcement can use facial recognition technology to track participants. This law builds upon Hungary's controversial 2021 child protection law, which restricts queer content aimed at minors. The European Union has condemned the law, calling it discriminatory, while local pride organizers have labeled it simply fascism. Which is exactly correct. It is exactly fascism. And by the way, a lot of what we have now from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue actually is based off of Viktor Orban's playbook. He has been invited to speak at CPAC events. He is a very and all the "don't say gay" stuff are based off of what he tried to do. Viktor Orban has ruled Hungary for now a good portion of the decade now. He has been basically, it's now essentially just a authoritarian dictatorship in a velvet glove. They pretend to have elections, he wins anyway. And European Union has been very concerned about that, and they have threatened to cut off funding to, just like Poland was faced with funding cuts when they tried to get a bunch of LGBTQ free zones. Remember that one? I think it was like last year. And EU is like, well, if you want my money, you're not going to have those things. And that worked. And, and Poland also had a dramatic swing to the left after the election, after Law and Justice finally failed. Thank God. And now with Hungary, essentially I'm afraid that would be the next step that Americans would do, or at least in red states. Ron DeSantis saying that, we're all going to ban pride parades, and especially given with states with Republican supermajorities, that might pass. Although, of course, there's the question of free speech. And if Skokie has any guide, that would probably fail constitutionally.
Well, hopefully. I've found that the rule of law is more of a joke than it is a policy in this country. Young people today, they go to law school. I'm like, are you sure? You sure what you're learning is of any use
We
anymore?
need young lawyers.
So,
Yes.
but if the rule, I mean that if the rule book keeps getting ripped up, I don't know how you navigate that.
Yeah, well, again, I've mentioned on prior broadcasts, we need to take our talents, I mentioned certainly in the arts, but our technical folks in our LGBTQ communities and allies to make sure that artificial intelligence, these things that we're talking about now with facial recognition, stay in check. We also need to make sure we encourage people in our communities to run for office to counter all this craziness. Certainly the idea of attending something and having to alter one's appearance so that one doesn't get prosecuted is scary, or outright not enjoying the right to attend a parade or be in a parade to celebrate who we are. Because then you say, okay, what's next? Who are they going to come after? And of course, we go back to the example
rights,
of basic rights in the Holocaust.
The facial recognition software is, I think, probably the most frightening part of that story, Bobby. Both because of just the sort of Big Brother look,
Yes.
but also it's actually highly unproven technology. Corporations love to sell all this AI investigative technology. It doesn't work. Well, the New York City subways, AI was going to see if you had a gun, and they stopped hundreds of people in a month. And do you know how many guns they found?
None.
0. That's how good this tech is. So I look at this, and to the straight people in Hungary who watch this show for some reason, I would say to you why you should still oppose this. Mm-hmm. How do you know that AI isn't going to accidentally think you're that other person at the parade?
And also, also
Could have a
same
doppelganger.
Right? Or the way it looks at it is so kind of, it could put someone that's completely, you would not think looks anything like them. A computer might think looks like them.
Well, I think we're smart enough as a community. We're going to somehow work around that.
Well, I mean, there already talks about basically moving it into an indoor concert thing where people under 18 cannot be there. That skirts the rule, but that means that the youth of Hungary is never going to be able to experience Pride until they're of age, and they are already no longer being taught LGBTQ history or any of that stuff. And Hungary is a very conservative country where the Pride are more of akin to the traditional Pride we have had versus the bright and shiny Pride we have now.
And I've had friends who raised children, gay and lesbian, who brought their children to Pride, and they were destined to be who they were, whether they identified later as a lesbian, gay, or trans, or they were part of the cis community. That's who they are, but it didn't damage them.
Information never damages anyone.
No.
Information and education and exposure to other people from different cultures and identities, that's what they're trying to prevent. Conservatives want to conserve the traditional order by essentially erasing identities off the map and make sure that, you'll be treated, anyone who is not traditional identity are treated as alien, hostile.
It's important to remember that fascism isn't about preserving. It's about destroying and creating a new narrative that must be followed, and anything that deviates from that narrative has to be destroyed. It's it's a weirdly, perversely different thing.
And again, looking at some irony, I know people who are, I don't talk to them really too much anymore, but they've chosen that path, and that they say that people in our community on the left are looking to be fascists when it's the furthest thing from the truth.
Exactly. I mean, whatever, they always cling to National Socialist, so is DPRK. So, but,
that we're going to be grooming their children because that's what we're paid to recruit and get paid bucks to do.
Yeah.
Every accusation is a projection.
Absolutely.
Every accusation is an admission. I mean, how many drag queens have they arrested for, crimes against minors versus how many pastors?
Well, you look at the owner of one of the owners of a Chick-fil-A franchise who was arrested for pursuing, I think, a 12-year-old out of state.
Oh, my.
Wow.
Now he's incarcerated. And he was a Trump affiliate.
Of course. That is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer news nonprofit media platforms like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight. Those are today's headlines from Queer News Tonight. These anchors represent the best of our LGBTQ and ally community.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Join the conversation on your favorite streaming platform. Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines.
We need your support. If our community is to grow and then thrive, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Dr. Bobby Huen, and on behalf of these LGBTQ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Alex Morash and Larry Farver, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. To our LGBTQ world, we hope you will join us by embracing love, generosity, bravery, and be transformative and queer. Good night.
Good night.